Hello, hello, hello. It's Tammy, and it is time to welcome you to the fire pit and for our virtual bonfire. So when you hop on, say hello. I will grab my iPad in just here a second and I will watch for comments. But if you were here, we would be outside, we would be in a little bit of a jacket, and we would be getting ready to start our fire. So this is one of the projects that I gave you a pattern for. Welcome to the fire pit where friends and marshmallows get toasted. There are all sorts of sayings for fire pit signs, but really the basics of a fire pit wood sign is mostly the fire itself. And it's going to be done very similarly to how we're going to do ours on our project tonight. So I hope you have something fun to sip, whether it's something good or something that's really good. I actually am going to sip on one of my favorite beverages, which is, how well do you know me? A little bit of bourbon. I'm going to grab my iPad and just see if I can pop us up here. Facebook has been very challenging. Very challenging. There we go. Awesome. And sometimes I've been able to see things. I can, that's awesome. And sometimes I haven't. But I always go back and look at comments. So if in the midst of anything you have any questions, by all means put them on here and I will go back and answer them. I looked and looked and looked for my original painting of this today and could not find it. So I painted another one, which is no big deal. So this is the one I painted this afternoon, which looks very similar to the original. And then I was getting ready to grab something to paint with tonight. And I paint a lot in mixed media pads. Those are, hello, Gwen. They're a heavier weight paper. I don't just, if I painted everything on canvas, I would probably have every inch of my walls covered. But as I was getting ready, putting my paper ready, I actually taped mine off. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's actually tape around it. And that way I just have a nice little border. And lo and behold, guess what I found? Well, who knows? Can I find it again? It was in here all along. See? There it was. I just didn't look hard enough. So that was the very first one I did when I did it on the mixed media paper, when I was just playing around, and I was playing around with those chairs to begin with, and then we kind of made them look a little better. And tonight I'm going to paint again in my mixed media pad. So wanted you to see the other version of it. This is done on an 11 by 14 canvas. Same deal. Going to walk you through the paints and the brushes we're going to use. Always, always, always use what you have. And if there's a brush you love, use that. If I happen to pick up a fan brush and you don't have a fan brush, I promise you we can get the same result with something else. So I'm just going to set that down for now. Let's talk paints really quick. Again, if you don't have these exact colors, don't worry about it. We'll make anything work. You need a black and a white. That's okay. And that's what we're going to use to make our gray. Okay. You're going to need a brown of some kind. This is dark chocolate, but burnt umber would work, or bittersweet, anything. It's just a little bit for our trees and a little bit for the wood in our fire. You're going to need a yellow. This is primary yellow. Any yellow will do. You're going to need a red. This is primary red. Now, when we mix primary red and primary yellow, we get orange. But we also have the ability to have all sorts of bottled colors. So I did grab this brighter orange, which is jack-o'-lantern. And then I wanted just a little bit of a dirtier orange. And if I didn't have this, I could take my brighter orange and add a little brown to it. But this happens to be burnt orange. And you can tell it's just a little more brown than orange. Also, you're going to need a couple shades of green. I tend to almost always have my Hauser greens. There are 3 shades of Hauser, light, medium, and dark, and I just tend to have them around. I paint a lot of flowers, and they are great foliage colors, and for what we're going to be doing tonight, they work great. If you don't have them, we can also make green with yellow and blue, and we can just make different shades of it by adding a little yellow and a little white, and or a little white. So my sky, again, you can use any blue you like. I just happened to like the look of navy, and I like something a little darker. And so this is Prussian. If you didn't have those 2 colors, not to fret, just use the blue you have, and then we can add a little black to it just to make it a little darker, where we're going to need it just a tiny bit darker in the sky area. So that's that for the sky. Did we cover everything? And then after we get done, when we get to the point of making our leaves pop, we're going to use a couple metallic colors. And I used tonight copper. These are DecoArt Dazzling Metallics. You should be able to get those in your Hobby Lobby or Walmart, or you can order them directly from DecoArt. I also used a little Emperor's Gold. It's a pretty bright gold. And then when I did my flame, I kind of came back and added some glitter. This is orange glitter. If you don't have orange glitter, clear glitter would be just fine. And when I played with my moon a little bit, I wanted it to have a fun glow. So this is Glamour Dust, and this is actually gold. And while it does have a tint of gold to it, it doesn't really change my paint color that much. It just kind of gives it a gold shimmer. And again, if you didn't have that, you could easily just use clear glitter. So I'm going to do our sky tonight with a sponge, and you can use just a regular household sponge if you have one, like something like this, depending on how big you are working with. Or I happen to have this smaller little sea sponge, and that's what I'm going to grab. It is always a good idea, and I don't know that if I have one handy, I might have to go grab one, to put a glove on when you're doing sponging, because if there's any moisture at all in that sponge, it's really easy for it to get all underneath your hands. I'm going to grab a glove. Hang on tight. Sorry, guys. Because that's what we're going to start with. Now, the other thing you could use, if you didn't have a sponge handy, you can actually just crumple up a paper towel too and do it. But we're going to use a sponge. So I'm going to put you down. You're going to be upside down most of the time, but I'll try to flip it so you can see it here and there. And again, you have any comments, let me know. Let me hit brushes just really, really quick. Again, brushes are what works best for you. What I ended up doing when I did that 11 by 14 is I used a number 6 round, a number 3 round. I use this little flat to just kind of soften everything, but you can use any brush at all because it's just going to be to soften some edges. And I used a fan brush. And if you don't have a fan brush, again, we can just make it work with just a regular flat brush. A fan brush just kind of gives you some fun little texture. You can do it also with a wisp brush or a rake brush, but for the grasses that we're going to create, that is just a little sloppy and have a little bit of texture, that's kind of fun. When it comes to softening, I said you can use any brush, just a clean brush, or if you happen to have a mop brush, they look like a big blush brush. They're sometimes very helpful, but not 100% necessary at all. Okay, so I'm going to first of all put the colors out on my plate that I'm going to need. I know a color I used that I didn't tell you. I'll tell you right now, is I used a little bit of alizarin crimson. It's a little bit of a purplier red, and you're not going to need but a dot of it. But you're going to need to start off with your blues. If you've got 2 shades, great. Otherwise, have blue and a little black, and you're also going to need a little white. Now, if we look at our picture, our sky is about half. It's pretty much about half. So that's about how much we're going to do. There's no sense in doing our sky in our grass area because we're going to make that green, and it just makes it that much more challenging. Hi, Val. Nice to see you guys. So I'm going to start with this sponge. It is damp. I didn't like wet it, but I had washed it, so it's a little damp. I'll put you down. And I'm going to dab into my blue. This is the navy blue. And I'm going to start about halfway, I said. About. Doesn't have to be exact. I'm just going to get some of this good color on here. Other thing you will want to make sure you have with this project is a blow dryer. This is the navy. I'm picking up some of that darker blue, that Prussian blue, and I'm just going to hit it around the edges. And dirty sponge, picking up some white. I'm going to start in the middle. It's going to be a little lighter in the middle, and we'll just pull, pounce. No two skies are ever exactly alike, kind of in real life. And pick up a little more white to lighten up my center a little bit more. Still dirty sponge. I'm going to pick up some of that alizarin crimson. And I want this mostly around my moon area. So I'm going to give this little spot there that I'm not going to play with a whole lot. I'm going to pounce it out. Just going to let it dance a little. It's kind of, like I said, more of a purpley red than our normal red. And if you like that look, or if yours is really more, say, that, when we have those sunsets and sunrises, this would be a sunset, that get kind of that reddish color. What skies at night? Red sky at night is sailor's delight. Is that right? I can't remember if that's right or not. Okay. So I haven't cleaned this sponge or anything else yet. I'm going to go back in with that white. I'm going to try to find a little bit of a cleaner part of my sponge, and I'm just going to start tapping in where I want my moon glow. Now, it's wet on wet, so it's going to fade into like nothingness. And if I keep playing now, it's just going to get muddy. So I don't want muddy. Not what I want. So I'm going to set my sponge down. I'm not going to wash it quite yet because I might want to pick it up for another little bit in that moon center. Put this down. Okay, so we got that. Okay, good. All right, so we have this ground area, and we want it to start to be filled in with some greens. So I'm going to put on my plate my Hauser Green Dark and a little Hauser Green Medium. Now, the one thing I do want to do is I want to make sure right at my horizon is darker. So I used this fan brush, and I just dabbed into my paint, and I just laid it down where my horizon was going to be, and I just kind of tapped it. Now, I know I'm going to come back and add some other color, so if I've got a little bit of white, it's okay. And I started just pulling down. Now, this takes a little bit of time. If you wanted to do something a little quicker, you could sponge this on, or I'm going to show you with the paper towel another way to do it. It is nice to have some dark here and there. Even when we come back with lighter colors, it creates some nice shadowing without us having to go back and do any type of shading. I'm just going to set that brush down a second. And I'm just picking up a little wad of paper towel, and I'm just going to make it a little damp. Not super wet, just a little damp, okay? And I can pick up a little more than I wanted it to be, clumped up. Here, let me open that up a little bit. I could have grabbed myself a little bigger piece of paper towel. I'm not on that big of a ration. Or I can go right into my medium color. We can play with our ground a little bit because we want to give our sky a chance to dry enough so we can come back and give our moon area another coat. And when I worked on canvas, I still had some blank canvas spots that I still saw through, and that's okay because the ground isn't always completely covered, and we're now in that part of the season where our ground is getting less and less green. So it'd even be okay if we picked up a little brown or even a little yellow. And we'll pick up those colors as we go back and play with our ground. I'm done with that. Before I get rid of this sponge completely, I'm going to go back into a little bit of my white. Still that dirty sponge. I'm just going to try to tap it to make it a little whiter. And when I get out to that edge, I'm going to be softer. Even come back with a clean part of the sponge and just make my halo a little bigger. I'm going to be done with my sponge. So I'm going to throw that aside, put my paint aside there. I'm going to get rid of this. Now, I can't do anything with my moon while it's wet, and I really can't play much in my grasses either, unless I want to just, with that dirty brush, pick up the lighter shade. So that would be the Hauser Green Light. And I can just kind of tap in here and there just a little bit to break up these grasses. I am going to have to hit this with a blow dryer. But that's okay. So right now, all we really have is the basic beginning of our sky and the basic beginning of our grass. But if you see here, we have quite a bit of texture in that sky. And if you look, here's that moon, and it kind of diffuses out, similar to what we're doing here. And then if you look in the grasses, take away all the other stuff, you can see there's all sorts of tones of greens going on in there. Okay. A sip of my drink. And now I'm just going to hit this with a blow dryer super quick so we can do a little more to our moon. Okay. I'm going to pick up a round brush. This is where I'm going to use that number 6 round. I'm going to take a little bit of white first. And the first thing I'm going to do is as clean as water as I have, I'm going to dampen this, okay? I know, we just dried it. How silly is that, right? Then I'm going to pick up a little bit of the white with that still kind of sappy, soaked. I'm making it kind of washy. And I'm just going to let this fuzz out. And after I get it laid on there, I can take either just a clean brush and just kind of tap the edges to soften it. Or this is where I said you could also use a mop brush and just kind of tickle those edges. Have to let that dry enough so that it doesn't pick up. If I do this if I do too many steps while it's wet, I'm just going to reactivate the paint underneath there, and instead of having white as my glow, I'll have this light blue glow, which isn't always bad. It doesn't take long for acrylics to dry, especially when we thin them out. So I don't feel like I need to dampen it again, but I'm going to take and I'm going to I'm using a little extra water in my brush and the yellow, and I'm going to start in the middle. And I'm just going to let that yellow glow. And then to soften it, I can either tap it with a clean brush, or I can very, very lightly let it dust off. I probably want to do one more coat of yellow, but I want to let that dry. So let's think about our background. And we want to have some foliage kind of just peeking out in that background. We already have some of that green, and some of that green can still be there. I'm going to flip this around because I can do this part upside down pretty easily. So you want to have a few colors. So we've already got the yellow out. Let's have some of the darker orange. This is my burnt orange. I'm going to do a little brighter orange. My plate's already a mess. I'm going to pull in some brown. This isn't for my background, but I know I'm going to need it really soon. And I might even want a little bit of red. There's my alizarin crimson. Can you see the difference in those two reds? The alizarin crimson is over here, and it's much more of a purpley red. All right, so I did all of this with just that round brush, and I'm just going to very, very loosely, I'm serious, very loosely. So I'm just going to pick up the darker orange to begin with, and I'm going to start just tapping in some color. I'm just tapping. I'm not pounding. I'm not creating any strokes. I'm just tapping in some color. I'm going to do it on this side too. Okay. Now, if you play along or painting along and you like this, you'll be happy to know that I'm going to be doing a much more detailed class with kind of these floppy colors. So that's one color. I'm going to go into the brighter orange. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to set it down. It doesn't have to be solid. It's okay if I see some of the blue through it, and it's okay if I go down into the greens a little further. When we're at a dry point, I'll show you the two projects we're going to do in one class that are going to get to use a lot of what we started calling flobs earlier on. Flobs being blobs of color that are fall leaf colors. So I haven't washed my brush out at all. I'm going to pick up some yellow. I have some little taps of yellow in here too. You think about when you're driving and you're able to see some of these fall colors, it's those pops that just kind of get you. Here's a little red. So I'm picking that brighter red, that primary red, giving it a couple of taps here and there. Oops, white was not the desired color. We're going to just kind of come back over here, and I guess we'll have a little bit of a reddish pink shade there. I might want to come back and hit those. They're very subtle in the background. They seem like they stand out a lot now, but when we get everything else on there, you're not going to notice them a whole lot. Sorry, I've got my brush in my mouth. I've now rinsed my brush. The one other color I do want to have out is black. Because that dark chocolate is not a really dark brown, sometimes I find it helpful to add a little black. Now I have a tree on each side. You don't have to have a tree on each side. You could just do a single tree. I was playing with a card a few minutes ago, and I just did a tree on one side. But there's a good thing for you to see how light that dark chocolate is. I did not add black to anything there, and I think the black really helps it stand out much more effectively. So with that, I'm just going to take a little bit of that black, just going to mix it into my brown. And we're going to decide that we're going to have a tree, and it can start right at your horizon, or maybe it starts down a little more into your, let's move you over here a little bit. Let's have this tree start about here, okay? And a tree's wider at the base, and as it comes up, it's going to get skinnier. We're going to branch off. So as I'm branching off, I'm just kind of twirling my brush a little bit. Now I'm going to be coming in, filling this in with a lot of foliage. So I'm not going to see much of those lines at all. I do want to just pause for a quick second. We'll do the other side real quick. Do the same thing on the other side, and it can start wherever, or maybe it's just coming so you just see it off from the side. But you still want to be able to see a little bit of these branches popping through. Before I start to fill those up with anything, I'm going to look at my moon and decide if it needs any more. It actually looks pretty good, but I want to do it one more time for you. So I've cleaned my brush, and I can dampen it a little bit if I want to. And I can pick up a little bit of that yellow, with a little bit of water in my brush. And then rinse my brush out and just let it diffuse out. Or I can pick up one of those brushes and just soften it. So we have this autumn glowing moon. All right. So one of the things with these leaves that end up looking so cool that I have found that is really important is that you do them a couple times, and you do them with a couple different size brushes. So I've got those colors already on my plate. I'm going to start with any one I want, and this is super easy. I am not making any leaf strokes. I am just putting these flobs on. And so I'm just doing one color. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do this color here. I'm going to have to look at this at some point to see if I've got them kind of equally happening, but then I'm going to pick up another color, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm just letting my brush just kind of sit and flop down. Now we will bring some of these colors down into our grass, but we're not quite there yet. And that's okay, because then we have a chance to let these just become the first layers. Hello, Penny. So I haven't cleaned my brush at all. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that yellow. And I'm just I am so not controlling this at all. This is just little flip-flops of color. Don't forget to put a couple greens in there too, because our leaves don't just go from green one day to yellow and orange the next. They keep some of those greens with them, and that really helps with the transition of your coloring. All right. I'm going to take a quick peek myself and see what this looks like. Make sure I don't have any weird spots. I think we're good. All right. I'm going to rinse that brush out for right now. I still have that number 6 round. And I need to put a spot in the middle here for my, there's no late. There's never any late. Are you kidding? It's a bonfire. Show up when you need to. And we have a replay. So we need to kind of decide where our bonfire is going to sit. And look at this one. I kind of have it almost right underneath my moon, but obviously in the grass. And it's just an X. It's obviously not a solo stove. Now, I'm going to have to do this really quick. I'm going to have to just get myself an idea where this is going to go. Because it's not a straight up and down X. It's more of a slanty X. And I'm just going to give myself an idea where this is so I can turn it around. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that brown, maybe a little bit of the black mixed in with it. And it's already disappeared on me. This is just that dark chocolate and a little bit of the black. Then I make sure that one of those logs is more on top. So I'll take a little bit of the dark and just make it a little darker here and here. And not cleaning my brush, just picking up a little bit of white. I'm going to lighten up the log or bar that's on top a little bit. Just a little bit on the edges too. All right. We're going to start to build our fire. And my fire was done with red, orange, yellow, and a little bit of white. And I started with the red, and I just started pulling from my center and kind of start thinking about it swirling up, out, and around. This is just kind of like your first layer to get an idea where it's going. And I might have to turn this around so I can see if it's doing anything the right way. And don't forget, your fire kind of pops out down below too. Don't clean your brush. Go into your orange. Your paint's still going to be wet, so these colors are going to blend. So kind of have a lighter stroke for right now. We'll have more defined strokes in our next go round. This one, we kind of want those colors to start to blend a little bit. I want my fire to go up a little higher. Not cleaning my brush, dabbing into a little yellow. Now I'm not going to go over every stroke or I'll just have a muddy mess. I'm going to take a peek, see if it needs to be shaped up in any way, shape, or form. Oh yeah, it could use a little shaping. And you can go back and forth between your oranges and your yellows. All right. Not a bad beginning. It's going to need some work, but that's okay. Oops. So I'm going to grab a little white and black. I'm going to make gray. I'm going to put little stones around my fire pit. So think about a medium gray. So I'm going to start with a little white here. A little black. You can always make it darker. And they're little circles, and they're really, really sloppy. These are stones. These are very jagged stones. You could do this step before you put it in your first coat of your fire. It doesn't really matter, because if you put them all the way behind you, you'd be covering most of it up anyhow. Dirty brush, picking up a little more black into my gray, so I'm making it a little darker. And just pick a side, doesn't matter which side, and just lightly add a little black to one side. You didn't miss anything, Cam. We can always catch a replay, even on something like this. I leave it up for at least a couple days so you guys can catch a replay. I was saying a little earlier that Facebook is making groups very challenging right now. I don't know why, but I've had to go back and reuse a couple groups so I could get some classes started. Just adding a little bit of this darker. I just picked up a little more black and added it to the gray I made, and I'm going to run it up paint, but that's okay. You know, it's always a challenge. Dirty brush, I'm going to pick up a little more white, and I'm just going to hit spots on here. Again, these are rocks, so they're just little All right. I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to pick up a little of the brown with a little bit of white. So making a really light brown. And I'm just going to give it a couple little streaks in these things that are holding our fire. All right. Before I add any more to my fire, I'm going to do a couple things in my background. One, I'm going to mix a little yellow and a little brown. And either with the tip of my round brush or the flat of a the chisel of a flat brush, I'm going to pull just a couple of different grasses up from my bottom up, all over, just some different colorations. Now, I just did that with the tip of my brush. I could also go back to this fan brush and pick up that color that I just created and just pull a couple up that way, and they'll get real kind of wispy. I'm just breaking that up a little bit. And I want to do that before I dry it again and put my pattern on for my chairs. Now, you don't have to put a pattern on for your chairs. I just think it's a little easier. I don't like that my tree trunk is really just kind of hanging out there. So I'm just going to pick up a couple of colors of the greens and pull some extra stems there. This guy's already off into another world. So let's put our pattern on. I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to hit it with a blow dryer just because I know a lot of my leaves are wet. When I put my chairs on earlier today, you're going to have to look and see where your chairs are going to go. Then you might have done your fire perfect and your chairs can just line up there. I'm going to have to move mine just a touch or they're going to be inside the fire. And that is the joy of doing this on tracing paper, is that I can see through it. So I can kind of go, oh, there's my fire. I need to move this chair a little bit this way. So I'm just going to move my chair right there. About there? That's good. I had a really hard time transferring this earlier today, and I ended up going back with black instead of white. I thought white would make more sense, but I couldn't see it. So let's see if I can see it with black tonight. And I'm just going to use either a stylus, or this happens to be, this is one of my favorite things to use. This is one of the retractable pencils, and I just make sure there's no lead on it. And let's lift this chair first. Put just your very basic lines on. I'm going to peek and see if I can see this. Okay. These are very rough chairs. These are not brand new Adirondack chairs. These are chairs that have stood the test of time. Oops, I forgot an arm. So remember that when you're painting them. So I've got that one there. I'm going to need to move this one maybe about, let's not have it in the fire. How about there? That's good. So I'm putting my graphite underneath my pattern. I'm just tracing around the bare minimum lines that I need. And some of these lines may get a little shifted as I go. You're not going to be able to see them yourselves. You have to trust me. And this guy kind of ended up in the fire, so we're gonna scoot that leg back. We'll make it work. Okay, so you need to make yourself a gray, a medium gray, and I'm going to need to do this part upside down. I'm sorry, guys. So you're going to have to like switch your camera angle. I'll try to turn them back in just a second. need to make a light gray. And I did this with my number 6 still. I did most of this painting with my number 6. So here's my white. Here's a little black. Maybe a little more white. I want this to be a medium to light to medium gray. Okay. So the first thing I did was I kind of figured out where my arms were going to be. Here's my arm. Here's my arm on this chair. And here's a leg. And here's a leg. There's a leg back here and a leg down here. And there's the base or box seat of my chair. And here is the outline of my chair. And I'm going to just use my round brush and stroke down the slats to start this chair. I'm not going to worry how many slats there are. So I have a very, very basic shape of a chair. If you don't have graphite paper, you can make graphite paper. This chair is really going to bother me. I might have to change this chair. Let me see if I have an eraser. The nice thing about graphite paper, as you're getting to experience right here in real life, is you can erase it. Carbon paper is really hard to erase. So I'm erasing this chair because this chair was sitting inside the fire. So we're going to put this chair back on, and we're just going to have it outside the fire. Okay. So here I just need to make a mental note that that is my last rock. All right. Like I said, you kind of have to adjust these. Is that right? That's right. Okay. So I'm going to stick my graphite underneath there. But if you don't have graphite, you can always take a pencil and scribble on a piece of paper and put the pencil side toward whatever you need to transfer it to. And that's a great way to make homemade graphite. Okay. So we have, this is an arm. This is an arm. This is the back of my chair. This is the base of my chair. Leg, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's see if you can see that. You can. All right. So remember, this chair is actually sitting like it's going toward the fire. That one's, they're just at different angles. It was the best I could do. All right, so I'm going to go back with the gray I made. And I might just go ahead and put in my legs because I can see them, even though they got close to the fire. Here's my arm. Now you can make these much more fancy, sorry, didn't mean to swear. But I wanted these to be pretty rustic. I need to make a little more gray. I ran out of gray. I'm just going to go around the back of my chair so I know where the back is. And then we're going to have to let Tammy look at it for just a second because the angles are not making sense to me. Okay, we're good now. We're good. We're golden. All right, just like I did on the other one, I'm just going to create the slats. All right, and we're breathing, and we're breathing, and we're breathing. I'm gonna rinse my brush out. So I want you to look I mean, really look. Those chairs are not well defined. They are broken up with some darker color in between the slats. I underlined or made very more prominent the underside of those arms just so they stand out a little bit more. Same with the seat, just a couple slashes. Now if I go over to this guy, this guy, there you go. You know, defining the arms, separating those slats in the chairs, and it, when you look at it from the composition point of view, they look like decent chairs, okay? They're not well defined at all. Let me see how we are doing. I make it look easy. Oh, good. That's what that's what I'm supposed to do. All right. So whatever gray you made, make it a little darker. I don't like to go straight black, but you can. So let's first kind of really define underneath those arms. Actually, I'm going to outline that whole arm because you really need to see that arm. Just underneath this one. Then, in between these slats, and don't worry if your lines aren't completely straight. Picking up a little more water, and I'm going to basically outline where my legs are. Here's my seat. Couple slats across there. Couple lines within my slats. I'll come back and highlight this, but right now we're just getting some basic shape shading in. Shape shading. Same with this guy. If we come back over here, more black. And I'm just using the very tip of my brush. If this is hard for you to use, go ahead and switch to a smaller round or a liner brush. Not sure where that white came from, not planned. Guess I need to clean my brush. I am going to need to turn him because I don't see my angles very well. But I'm going to come in between here with the darker gray. And you can even outline the tops of them if you want. Let me pull this around just real quick like so I can have a decent seat. So it goes under the arm, down, across. So we should have a little more defined chair at this point. And now we're going to come in between there and where we still have a little of the lighter gray showing, we're going to make a really light gray, almost white, but not quite. And we're going to highlight. And it's just hit and miss. If you try to do every slat, it's going to make it harder for you to make these chairs look rustic. And we are aiming for rustic chairs today. You'll notice that sometimes, especially when you're working on black and whites or grays in this case, that it takes several coats of both colors because about the time you think you've put too much white in, you let it sit for a minute and it almost blends in completely. I'm just very little on my brush here. Okay. We're okay with that. I want to come back and do our fire again. And this is where I'm going to come back, and I'm going to using the same colors. So I've got red in my base, then I come into some orange and some yellow, but this is where I can really make sure I've got not just a little bit of color, but I can really make sure that I'm concentrated a little more red down at the base, maybe a few little flicks down below there, and then decide how much of a curly Q or a swirly Q it has. So I'm going to attempt to do this upside down. I'm going to start with my red. And I am doing this with pretty light touches. I'm not really doing this heavily. I'm just kind of really light, kind of letting it just lay down. Dirty brush into my orange color. And it's a light touch. I want some of that orange to go out further than my red. We'll come back and play with art chairs a little more, but for right now, should have a little orange popping down here. Dirty brush going into my yellow very lightly. Now, if you actually look at a real fire, it actually is very red at the tips when it gets really hot. We have a solo stove, and our fires get really, really, really hot. I love our solo stove. We bring our solo stove up on our deck in the winter. It's quite fun. All right. I'm okay with this for now. I can come back and play a little more. I want to switch. Before I switch, I'm going to look and see if there's any areas I might want to pull some extra grasses. Now that I have my chairs sitting, pretty much, maybe I need a little bit of dark right underneath their feet. I'm just using that fan brush and just that very tip. And I might want more of a brown, yellow kind of grasses, because as the fall happens, we get all sorts of colors. Oops. There's some grass right on my... Okay. Now I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. If you don't have a smaller round brush, just use the very tip of the one you used before. I know I have one. I showed it to you. Here it is. I'm using the same colors I did before. So I'm going to start with this burnt orange, and my strokes are just going to be smaller because it's a smaller brush. But again, I'm not making a leaf stroke. I am setting it down and picking it up. And I'm going to let some of these fall down now, the smaller ones fall onto the ground. Switch to another color. This is my brighter orange. It is the layering of the size and letting them dry so you don't get all blended colors that really made these flobs work. Let's float down. Go into your yellow, little bits. I am not thinking about where my brush is landing. I'm just letting it sit. It blends a little bit with the color underneath it. That's okay. I don't think I'm going to need any more green showing. I think I did a pretty good job, but if you don't feel like you have any green showing, I would put a little in here now. Go into that red, or you can even pick up a little bit of the alizarin crimson, either one. But you want to have a little bit of those red pops. Aren't they fun? They just kind of make it, and they're just little blobs of color. That's all they are. All right. I feel like I rinsed my brush. I'm going in with a little yellow and picking up a little bit of white if I have a little white. I just feel like right at the tip of my fire needs a little more direction. I'm just gonna swirl it back in toward just a little lighter color. All right, that's a little better. A little better. You love this? Good, 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 good. All right, this is what I think makes this pop. So it doesn't look bad. I think this one looks better. But I think what makes this look better, and you're going to have to look close, but there is just a very little bit of metallic colors here and there in the leaves. And then we have a little bit of glitter that we bring into the fire. So the very first thing I did was I picked up the Gold Glamour Dust. And I did this with a kind of wet brush. Not that brush. So here's my, here's my round brush. It's pretty clean. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of this Gold Glamour Dust, and I'm just going to swirl it in my moon. And don't worry if it goes on to a couple leaves, it's okay. But it's just gonna give this a little bit of a fun glow. Okay? Rinse that out. Pick a couple metallic colors. This is Rich Espresso. I didn't use that one before, but I might tonight. This is copper, and then there's a gold. So you don't use much of it. So a lot of times I'm just picking it up out of the cup, and you can either size, doesn't matter, because you're just gonna little flecks of it. You don't want a lot of it. You want just a little bit here and there. And don't forget to pull a couple down. Into your grassy area. And if you want, you can even pull a couple little flicks of copper into your... I didn't do that before, but that was fun. Okay, so that's the copper. I'm going to pick up a little bit of a brighter gold. This is Emperor's Gold. Glorious Gold would work. Any of the golds. I mean, so here again, I'm doing the same thing, just little flicks. I want these small. These are just little bits. It's okay if some of them go on top of another color. But I'm not making this like tons of it, just little bits. And again, if you wanted, I didn't before, but why not? Okay. And the last thing I added to it was orange twinkles. Clear would work too, because I'm just really emphasizing some of these swirls in my fire. And the orange just works lovely with these colors beneath it. Now, if you think this is fun and you think you might want to do something a little more detailed with it, let me show you what I've kind of come up with. A little bit here, here. I'm going to lift this up so you can see my shimmers. Look at your chairs. You might need to come back and add a little more highlight, add a little more shading. Each one is a little different. I'm seeing here, I might want this to really stand out a little more, so I'm just going to bring in a little more black. A little black here. Just underneath there. You could even bring in a little bit of brown into these chairs. Get underneath my arms a little more. Have to really let the light catch it. Okay, so I want to tell you real quick before I forget that you know, I played a lot with these flobs. Just my hand through, showing it a couple different ways, but I know sometimes it's different if you can actually have all the patterns and whatnot. So look, I already have the tracers done. So the original one I did was the lamppost. So I'm going to go ahead and get you, I'll give you the tracer, but I'm also going to show you how we can draw this lamppost. So it can be this size or it can be a whole porch leaner size. So that's going to be kind of like my close-up version of it. But look, that's all those are. They're just those same strokes. Only this time, there's a little different background color, and we do it more than twice. Then the second one is going to be using the light. Where's the light post? Light post. From more of a distance, and it's part of that scene. And you're going to draw this little bench. Nothing spectacular. But I'm doing this kind of in honor of our sweet, sweet May because she's having surgery, and surgery is not cheap. So we're going to do this class. We're going to over-deliver for you guys so you have a chance to play with these a little bit. I loved when I did the lamp post originally. Mine is actually, if you look behind my head, can you see it? It's on my wall over there. I used a filbert brush, and I loved the roundness, and also it allowed me to be a little more gloppy. But this is our bonfire. I wish you guys were here to go sit by my bonfire with me. But if you want to play a little more with the flobs, that would be a great class to take. I think I just posted it. It's really a challenge right now to get classes up with Facebook. We are beginning our investigation for another platform. If any of you know of a great one, let me know. I'm all ears. I like the Kajabi website, but it's really hard to do lives there, and I think lives are just a little special. I wish you were here too, Nancy. That would be awesome. We just had our driveway. What do you call it? Refinished, when they freshen it up. And we happen to have a little odd situation. Our house is on a very pretty significant slope. And when they built this house for a young man in a wheelchair named Ryan, not ours. And he loved to play basketball. And so they actually put a half basketball court in our backyard. And so we have that paved as well. So yeah, and our Ryan loves to play ball as well, so it works out really well. So that just got what is it called? Repaved? That doesn't sound right to me. Maybe that is right. So that's done. So that's usually where we do our fires, and we can't do that tonight. So the nice thing about a solo stove is we can actually pull it up on the deck, and it doesn't get too hot, and we can do that. So let me know. I'd love to have you join me for the, what did I call them? Autumn Lights. I think I called them Autumn Lights. And I'm going to try really hard to fight with Facebook tomorrow to get a few more classes up. I want to do a couple more Halloween things. I will have Tuesday tips, techniques, and teachings tomorrow at 2. I think, pretty sure we're going to do, I don't know, we might need to do that October snowman. He seemed like he was pretty popular, so we might do him, or we'll come up with something fun to do. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the bonfire. Doing the fire is fun. I mean, the chairs look great from a distance. Now, up close, they have could use some help. Let me show you one last little thing. I told you that I put tape down on mine. And tape, as we all know, can pull and tear paper. So a trick that I learned a while ago is if you hit it with a blow dryer, you tend to loosen that sticky part so it doesn't stick as badly. And then when you go to pull it off, you're not pulling the paper off. Oops, there's a little bit there. And if it does start to pull on you, you can always hit it with a blow dryer again. Got one more edge here. Hang on. And you have that, I like to tape it because that way I have a nice clean edge if I want to frame it, well, this is going to be fun, maybe. Here we go. And then your edge is nice and clean. All right. Thank you, guys. I enjoyed having you. Can't wait to see you again soon. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for the stars, Becca. That is so sweet of you. And we'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday, tips, techniques, and teachings at 2. See you then. Take care. Bye-bye.